A black veteran in uniform walks into a local diner, hoping for a quiet meal after a long day. But instead of respect, he faces something shocking: an encounter with a police officer who questions his service, his uniform, and even his worth. What starts as a simple interaction quickly escalates, leaving everyone in the diner frozen in disbelief. The officer's words cut deep, dripping with arrogance and prejudice. Other diners look on, unsure whether to step in or stay silent. But what happens next? It's something no one, including the officer, saw coming. This is a story of injustice, courage, and an unexpected twist that will leave you speechless. Stay with us as we unravel this powerful story that challenges stereotypes and reminds us all of the importance of dignity, respect, and humanity. You won't want to miss this. The diner falls silent as the officer continues his questioning, his tone sharp and condescending. "So, where'd you really get that uniform?" he sneers, his eyes narrowing as if searching for a crack in the veteran's calm demeanor. The veteran, a man in his late 30s, stands tall, his posture steady despite the weight of the moment. His name tag reads Williams, and his uniform displays the medals he's earned through years of service. But to this officer, none of that seems to matter. The other diners exchange uneasy glances, some pulling out their phones to record, while others look away, uncomfortable with the scene unfolding. Mr. Williams takes a slow breath, his voice calm but firm, as he tries to explain his service. Yet, the officer cuts him off, dismissing his words. The tension grows, and just as it seems unbearable, something unexpected happens that shifts the entire room. The officer steps closer, his voice louder now, drawing even more attention. "You expect me to believe you earned those medals? I've seen people like you before, always trying to play the hero." His words hang in the air, heavy and cutting. Mr. Williams' jaw tightens, but he remains composed, meeting the officer's glare with steady eyes. Nearby, a young waitress grits her notepad tightly, her face a mix of fear and anger. She glances at the veteran, then back at the officer, debating whether to step in. An older man in the corner shakes his head, muttering something under his breath about respect and decency. But it's not just the officer's words causing the tension, it's the unspoken challenge in the air. Mr. Williams finally speaks, his voice calm, but carrying a weight of conviction. "I serve this country just like anyone else. My uniform isn't a costume." The officer smirks, but before he can respond, a voice from behind interrupts, breaking through the silence like a bolt of lightning. Every eye in the room turns to the source, as the stakes suddenly rise higher than anyone expected. The room turns to see a middle-aged woman standing by the door, her voice steady and commanding. "Is this how we treat the people who risk their lives for us?" she asks, her sharp tones slicing through the tension. She steps forward, her gaze fixed on the officer. "Before you embarrass yourself further, maybe you should stop and think about who you're talking to." The officer stiffens, clearly caught off guard, but he quickly regains his composure. "Ma'am, I don't believe this concerns you," he snaps, though his voice wavers slightly. "It concerns all of us," she shoots back. Disrespecting a veteran, that's not just a bad look, it's disgraceful. Mr. Williams watches silently, his expression unreadable, as whispers ripple through the diner. The tension thickens and the officer, now visibly flustered, looks around as if seeking support. But just as it seems the confrontation might shift, Mr. Williams calmly steps forward, drawing everyone's attention back to him. "I stayed quiet long enough," he says, his voice carrying a quiet strength. What he says next leaves the room stunned, and the officer frozen in place, his arrogance unraveling before everyone's eyes. Mr. Williams clears his throat, his eyes locking onto the officer's. "Before you assume you know my story, let me tell you something you don't." His voice is calm, but carries a sharp edge that silences the room. He pulls a small, worn photograph from his pocket and holds it up. "This is my unit. My brothers and sisters in arms. We served together overseas, and some of them didn't make it home. I wear this uniform for them." The officer's expression falters, but he quickly masks it with a smug grin. Nice story. Anyone can carry around a picture. Before anyone can respond, the door to the diner swings open again, and another figure steps in, a tall man in civilian clothes, his presence commanding. He walks straight to Mr. Williams, extending a hand. "Sergeant Williams, it's been a while." The room collectively gasps as the man turns to face the officer, revealing his identity, a high-ranking police official. The officer stumbles over his words, his confidence cracking. "Chief, I didn't know." The chief cuts him off, his voice firm. "That's clear. But you're about to learn a valuable lesson, starting now." The diner is on edge, everyone holding their breath as the moment inches closer to its boiling point. The officer's face turns pale as the chief steps forward, his authoritative presence silencing any attempt at an excuse. "Sergeant Williams has done more for this country than you'll ever understand," the chief says, his voice steady but filled with disappointment. "And you decided to disrespect him in front of witnesses. Unacceptable." Mr. Williams stands silently, his calm demeanor unshaken, as the chief continues. "You see, I know Sergeant Williams personally. We served in the same division before I transitioned to law enforcement. So not only did you insult a veteran, you insulted one of the best soldiers I've ever known." The officer stumbles, searching for words, but before he can speak, Mr. Williams interrupts. "I'm not here for apologies," he says firmly. "I'm here for accountability." The chief nods, turning to the officer. "Hand over your badge," he orders, the weight of his words echoing through the diner. The officer reluctantly complies, his arrogance completely stripped away. As he leaves, the diner erupts into applause. But just as the tension eases, Mr. Williams turns to the crowd. "Respect shouldn't come from a uniform or medals. It should come from our humanity." His words leave the room in reflective silence, a final, powerful twist no one expected. As the officer exits the diner, the atmosphere shifts. Conversations spark among the diners, some expressing their regret for staying silent, others praising Mr. Williams for his composure. The young waitress, who had been holding back earlier, walks over to Mr. Williams with a small smile. "Your meal's on the house," she says softly. He nods in gratitude, his eyes kind but distant. The chief places a hand on Mr. Williams' shoulder. "I'll make sure this doesn't happen again," he promises, his tone sincere. Mr. Williams looks at him, his expression thoughtful. "It's not just about me," he replies. "Change starts with moments like this, but it's about what happens next." As he leaves the diner, heads held high, a sense of quiet triumph lingers. The moment has passed, but its impact remains, reminding everyone that dignity and respect are not optional, they are essential.